Hey, well, welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Tax. Today we have a location advisory special. We've got a couple guests joining me today. We'll talk all things location advisory, maybe some things are going on from an economy standpoint, maybe how that's affecting clients. But today I've got Chad Collier, relationship manager with our McGuire Sponsor team, and then Brad Brown, a member of the BMSS team. Brad, why don't you take a second just to give our listeners a little background?
Yeah, happy to do that, Justin, and really appreciate y'all inviting me to be on today. Our firm, BMSS, is located in Birmingham, Alabama, so we're really cover most of the Southeast, although we file returns all over the country these days. But firm started in 1991. We have offices in Birmingham, Gadsden, Huntsville, Mobile, and now originally Mississippi as well. Um, Cover all gamuts of the accounting function for our clients, whether it be base level bookkeeping, tax services, compliance, advisory, assurance services. So that's where we are, and having a relationship with a team like McGuire Sponsor is certainly a big help to us. So I'm excited to be here today.
Well, I appreciate it, Brad. Chad, a little bit of background. I know you're a long-time listener, first-time caller here, so why don't you give everybody a little spiel on your background?
Yeah, I've been in the relationship business now for the last 25 years. Kind of cut my teeth on the commercial real estate arena, then got into compliance, and then had the pleasure of working with McGuire Sponsor now for the last 12 months. So my specialty is LES. I love working with clients on the front end and kind of helping them maximize their tax advantage on credits and incentives.
Well, guys, we were talking a little bit about golf a second ago, and it doesn't sound like we're ever going to be able to leave our day jobs to go on the PGA Tour. So look forward to the discussion today, and as we kind of peel back location advisory and some of those other things. Brad, from a location advisory perspective, we've worked with you personally in delivering some economic incentives. Talk a little bit about what that meant for your clients and kind of just walk through that journey of how that was impactful.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is one of the areas that oftentimes clients don't think about that much. They're focused on more of the traditional compliance, tax saving opportunities. And so we try to preach to them before you make decisions, before you get plans in place, talk to us early and often. And we try to reach out proactively to clients to just check in and make sure we know what they're up to and what plans they have, because a lot of them, again, aren't aware that there's things like location advisory services where if you're planning on growing the headcount or relocating or buying a business, there's opportunities there to potentially get incentives that go beyond just the traditional forms of tax compliance and planning and deferral and those kind of things. So our goal is always stay in front of clients, make sure we know what they're up to. And when we hear those tag words, when we hear them saying like, well, we're thinking about expanding, we're thinking about buying, we're thinking about adding headcount, we immediately think, okay, before you put too many formal plans in place, let's get on the front end of this and see if we can make an impactful change for your business that could really result in real dollars back in the company, because we looked under every stone and tried to make sure that if there was an opportunity, we caught it. So that's how we approach it.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I came from public accounting background, and the fact of you have a lot of clients that will make these investments without ever talking to you or their accountant, and then you're trying to sit there at year end. They come to you in December and say, "Hey, how can I save money?" And it's like, well, if you would have brought me into the discussion back in March, we could have done a world of wonder for you.
That's exactly right.
So, when talking with all your clients, obviously, given we've had a crazy couple of years. You from 2020 to where we are now. Economic from the COVID response to remote workforce. And now we're looking at fluctuating interest rates. We're looking at unstable economic trends, tax legislation. What are some of the things that you're seeing from your client perspective? What are they worried about? What are maybe some of their pain points?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think a popular topic right now for our manufacturing folks would be tariffs. That's something that we get asked about a lot. So that's something that's coming up. Um, I haven't heard as much recently. For a few years there, it was all workforce, 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 we can't find people. At least the clients I'm talking to, I'm not hearing that as frequently anymore, which I think is a good sign. So that's something that seems to have been improving a little bit. And then now what we're hearing a lot is there's all this coming out very publicly right now in the news about tax legislation and what's coming down from DC, and you know, debates going on up there that are very well documented at this point. And so those are a lot of questions we're getting now of, hey, are we going to get depreciation back? Do I need to go invest in some assets? Like, am I going to be able to write those off? So a lot of those things, we have a lot of folks who want to expand. They want to invest back in their business. They see things moving. Tariffs have them a little nervous for some of them, but they want to do growth activities, but they want to be sure that when they do it, the tax code's going to reward them for it.
All these different factors, you talk about tariffs. I know from a location advisory perspective, it's certainly driven a lot of conversations for international investment here into the country. But then on the flip side, technology improvements, workforce, wanting to make sure that those are all in place. Chad, you get the luxury of also being able to talk with many CPA firms across the country. I'm sure a lot of them share the same pain points that Brad just described. Anything else that you're coming across?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to a CPA firm this morning, and it's really the conversation: when do we call you? So it's a timing thing, and then also they want to know, what company actually qualifies for a creditor incentive. What does that look like? How big does that transaction have to be? Back on the timing piece, I kind of shared with them this morning, like anytime that you're getting a call from a banker for financial statements, or you're getting a call from, we were ready to expand, that's typically a good time to engage our LAS team. Because as early on in the process as possible, this allows us to maximize that incentive and credit that could be on the table for that company. And then from who qualifies for a credit incentive, or we're doing an expansion, we're only going to add 25 jobs over 5 years. Well, that's a yes checkbox for us. Or we're only going to make a minimal investment, maybe $500,000 to $1 million is kind of our starting point. That's a checkbox for us as well. And then depending on the area, we can certainly look at where we can maximize that incentive. So what I'm hearing is it's all about timing, staying ahead of the deal, and then lastly, when do we call you? So if we're able to kind of identify those early on, especially when they're out meeting with clients and they can talk about those things, you can get ahead of those transactions.
President Trump, it seems, I think it's pretty clear his goal was to try to reshore a lot of that manufacturing back here into the States. And with that comes a heavy investment, heavy jobs. Manufacturing is an area that most states are very, very interested in trying to attract. And that's where a lot of those economic incentive packages are really rewarding. Chad, could you talk about maybe some of the planning opportunities that, if you're in manufacturing, or maybe in these data centers, or maybe in these kind of the high profile or the highly skilled jobs that are coming to these states, you as a taxpayer, you as a business or client, what are some of the planning opportunities that you should be aware of specifically within this location advisory realm?
So for our LAS practice, certainly that first conversation is that strategic one. What are you looking to do, and what area are you looking to maybe locate to? One of our areas for LAS is site selection. We've been very active in that department right now, especially with companies looking to relocate to the U.S., because we can do the due diligence on what states should we look at. And sometimes they don't even know what they don't know. And looking at what states actually favor investments outside of the U.S. So being able to narrow that list down, because you could look at a particular state and have over 100 locations. That's not what the client would come to us for. We're going to narrow that list down to the states that play well with those companies that are looking to invest in the U.S., what incentives in particular areas are going to be maximized, and what that could look like at a holistic level. Because certainly they want to look at other things: labor, housing, utilities. So it's the full gamut of that process. So when we're going and those companies are coming over to the U.S., we're actually going on these site visits with them and talking to the economic folks and just getting them familiar with what state they may want to be at for their facilities, and just making sure that we're checking those boxes. So when they go to the next step, whether it's go to the banker or go to the real estate broker or their CPA firm, they're already prepared with. We think we know where we at. We kind of narrowed the list down to 3 or 4 states. Now we just want to go and run with it.
But I think the exciting part about working with CPA firms in conjunction when we're approaching the location advisory realm is how are these tax benefits affecting the client? How are all these different programs or all these funds impacting the day-to-day operations? Brad, what are some of the things when you think about non-refundable credits and maybe some of these payroll programs that these states offer and training grants? From your perspective, what are some of the things that you look at when you try to help advise a client?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at, A, what's their growth goals? We want to know what they want to achieve. And a lot of times, clients may accidentally govern themselves with thinking that, well, I'm only going to have so much to spend. This is how much I can grow, even though I'd like to grow more. And sometimes with these location advisory services, you can open them up to bigger opportunities, to dream bigger, because they'll have these incentives and opportunities that, again, will put real cash back into the company to reinvest. And so where they were thinking they might only have enough capital to hire X, now they can hire Y. Or, they might want a facility here. Well, now it makes sense to move it there and things like that. So what we're listening to is first, what are your goals? And if you could dream bigger, what's the grand plan? And a lot of times that'll dovetail into this LAS of what are ways that are unconventional to the client because they don't usually think this way. What are ways to use those services to say, hey, we can get you a whole lot closer to that grand master plan than you ever thought possible. You don't have to govern yourself as much as you were thinking you did. You can open it up a little bit more. So that's what we try to do.
And I think to Brad's point, I think being able to help close the gap on some of those transactions, it only helps for the ask of what we're trying to accomplish. And if that happens, these companies are finding cash flow that they wouldn't have anticipated getting that helps get that deal done. And I think that's where having these strategic conversations on the incentive and the credit piece fronts, I think it just helps the relationship and actually having the deal get done down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So much of this conversation is being out in front of the ball and having these strategic conversations about what that growth plan is. Brad, I think it's not a secret that the CPA world, you guys have a lot of stuff on your plate, and so it can be challenging to sometimes make sure you're having those conversations with the clients out ahead. What are some of the things that you guys are doing or utilizing to try to make sure that you guys are still in front of your clients and having those very important conversations?
Yeah, one of the things we really stress within the firm is proactive communication with clients and getting away from maybe that old school model of it's a compliance based relationship. I'll reach out to you when I need information and when it's time to file a return, and then I'm going to go silent unless you need me until it's time to do it again next year. Obviously, the compliance piece is there, you have to do it, but we try to get all of our folks to view it as if you're a CPA in public practice, first and foremost, you really are an advisor and a consultant to that business client. And if you really want to add value, the compliance piece of filing the return, while important, isn't the value add really. It's all the planning that you've done beforehand. So we really encourage folks, touch base with your clients, have open-ended conversations with them, ask questions like we just said, hey, what are your plans? Okay, if you could dream bigger, what would those look like? And we really try to train our folks because to me, the days of being a generalist are gone. I now view myself more so as within the CPA firm, I'm my client's advocate. So there are things that I'm a specialist on, and that's good. But as I hear them discuss pain points or things they're trying to accomplish, I'm their advocate to know who do I have within the firm that could be a resource that's an expert there. And if I don't have the resource within the firm, who do we have, McGuire responsible, for example, who do we have that we can leverage and make sure that client gets taken care of? Because things have just gotten too complex. So you got to be having those conversations and you got to know who are those centers of influence to introduce your people to so that they get the right results and maximize, in this case, tax savings or whatnot.
Yeah, I think when you consider all of that and serving clients, you talk about it being no longer necessarily all compliance. I mean, as AI becomes more and more integrated with day-to-day functions, that compliance piece is going to move out more and more away from the human element and the consulting side. I mean, you're hearing it from top down. Consulting is where a lot of these firms are going to. So being out in front of your clients, or maybe you're out to go out and tour a manufacturing facility that your client has, and taking a look around. Okay, if there's busting out of the seams, maybe it's a great opportunity to have that conversation of what their growth opportunity is or what their growth plans are. But I think that spending that time and making sure we're out in front of our clients, bringing all these other opportunities, clients may never utilize the benefit, but I think the fact of you being in front of them, talking about the potential benefit, shows them you're thinking outside the box, which is exactly what they need on their team.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, we talk about you got to make yourself the value add piece is what makes you sticky. It's what gives you staying power. And so if all you ever do is just the compliance piece, well, that's when you get turned into a commodity, and we're just looking for the low cost provider. But if you're actually a valuable asset to their business because you're chipping in, you're making sure you know what's going on, and you're putting yourself in their seat and trying to view it through their eyes of what would I want for my CPA? Well, I would want them to be proactive. I'd want them to ask me these hard questions and help me think about my business model so that I can work on my business, not just in my business. So I 100% agree with you there.
Yeah, and I'll just add, you're certainly leading with the compliance piece, of course, but I think as we found with our partnerships and with the clients that are looking, it's being top of mind. When you're top of mind, and you've let that last question that you've asked about what are your growth plans for the next 3 years, or what big moves do you have coming in internally, and one of my favorites is if you had a home run, what would that look like? So it's allowing them to talk a little bit more about their business. So you're going to pick up on some of those key indicators, and then they're going to remember that top of mind when that expansion is going to happen. Or they're looking at, oh, I just talked about this home run with Brad when we're sitting down and doing our tax planning. I'm going to call him. I think those are the things that people remember, make you relevant, and that's the relationship mindset that we like to go with at McGuire and with all our partners in the alliance that we work with companies like BMSS.
Chad, you mentioned the word compliance. Can you speak about kind of the benefit of what our team can bring from the compliance piece? Because some of the feedback we typically get from potential clients, they think a lot of their time is going to be sucked up in these deals. The benefits are great. A lot of these deals are several $100,000s to the clients, but they always worry about their time. Can you talk a little bit about how our team is structured to take that pain point away from them?
Yeah, the compliance is a big piece after the deal gets done. And it's usually the harder piece because sometimes there's time that elapses after an application is submitted, the deal's awarded. They may not receive those incentives until the next year. So the compliance is a big piece. And staying ahead of that and making sure that those deadlines are met so they actually receive the benefit that we were able to get for them. And typically on the compliance side of things, a lot of these companies can do it themselves, but they don't want to. And oftentimes they may have change in leadership. They may have someone that is really not wanting to mess with any of the compliance work. That's part of our relationship that we have in the transaction. The tax credit incentive piece is the compliance that follows the transaction. So I just say it's one of those situations where the compliance is not important, but it comes very important as it becomes a hitting deadlines and making sure you're actually getting the benefits that you were rewarded in the end.
Yeah, there was a stat released a while ago that over 50% of these incentive deals never are fulfilled because of errors on the compliance side.
I believe it.
And that is staggering. I mean, you see these deals in the paper all the time, the business journals, and to think about half those stories, basically the client never pulls down money. And we see it. There's errors on some of the compliance, or there's misunderstandings on what they're asking for. And then sometimes the goalpost shifts a little bit. And if you don't have an advocate, and Brad, I think that word that you used earlier, that's such a strong and powerful word, is that advocate. And clients need that, especially in today's complex economic environment. You need that advocate in those specialized areas. And when we talk about partnerships, and we certainly appreciate the partnership with you guys, Brad, and that you view one of the words I hate personally is this term vendor. And sometimes people view us as a vendor, where I feel like the success for clients are when we can create that partnership and that we are strategically in sync, in line to serve clients and to bring them value. What what is your approach with that? How do you guys, take a look at these strategic partnerships as part of your firm and serving your clients?
Yeah, you hit on something really important there, which is you never want it to turn into a conversation where I'm trying to sell you on going and using somebody, because that's not what it is. It's always, this is a value add opportunity. I want to put you in the best hands possible, and these are the folks that can do it. And so when we're talking to clients, and again, we have the advocate hat on, they bring up something, whether it be, in this case, we're talking location advisory services, it could be R&D, it could be cost seg studies, it could be a whole gamut of things. And if it's something that I know internally we're not geared up to be a specialist on that, a bad answer is to tell that client, I don't have a resource for that, I'm sorry, I can't help you. So you got to have these strategic partnerships to where you can say, not only do I have a resource, but I think they're the best in the business, and I can get you in touch with them. They're going to take such great care of you, and you're going to love the experience because you're going to have a great relationship manager, and I'll be right there along with you every step of the way. And so for us, it's just that approach of, you know, you need this expertise. We may not have it internally in our firm, but we have the right people that can get the job done and do it at a high level. Um, so that's the way we approach that.
No, certainly appreciate it. Chad, from your angle, knowing how much our firm values a CPA relationship. I mean, from myself to some of the other leaders within our firm, we've sat on that side table. We worked in the public accounting world, so we can appreciate that when Brad calls us, he's sticking his neck out on the line. And so that's why it's driven home every day within our firm that we want to make sure we support the CPA relationship. From your end, Chad, what are the things that you do to make sure that we are supporting that relationship day in, day out?
Well, having done this for a while now, I can certainly appreciate Brad and the work that his team is doing in trying to get and keep those relationships. We would treat those opportunities like they're our own clients. And I think our biggest saying at McGuire that we like to do with our alliance partners is be excellent. Be in the moment of taking care of those clients as if they were our own. And I think that's a big piece that we practice at McGuire Sponsor, and I think our alliance partners appreciate that like we appreciate them. And that's how we operate, and that's how we do what we do.
Well, as we start to wrap up today, I think a couple things just to kind of circle back on, looking ahead to 2026, what's some advice that we can give the listeners, maybe just from a general economic standpoint, maybe some of the things you're hearing and maybe some of the tax planning, but then also from a location advisory, what are those triggers? When does it make sense to have that conversation? So, Brad, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing I mentioned earlier for us right now is what's going to happen with tax law. So much of our clients are concerned about that. They want to know what's coming down, what are the provisions going to be, and based on that, especially as it relates to depreciation, what am I going to go invest in? What do I want my plans to be for growth? Really just seeing, again, we mentioned tariffs too, but how's that going to trickle down? What's that going to look like, especially for our clients that are in the manufacturing industry? How's it going to impact them? And how are they going to make the economics of that work? So that's a big thing that we're going to be watching and trying to advise our clients on as we get through the end of this year and into 2026.
On the LAS side for us, it's really if a company is going to be adding 5 jobs a year over the next 5 years, making an investment in either a new build, an existing build, or an expansion or renovation, anything over $500,000, it's worthy giving us a call because there's usually going to be credits and incentives on the table for those opportunities, whether it's grants, investment dollars, tax abatements. They're there to be taken. So it's just a matter of finding the right buckets to get into. If any of that's happening, call us as soon as possible, and we'll make sure that we get ahead of those transactions and maximize and leverage that position for those credits and incentives.
Well, why that's so important. I mean, if you look on a per job basis, deals can include maybe five to upwards to $18,000 per new job created. On the investment side, you can look at benefits of 10 to up to 30% on whatever that investment side is in terms of these economic incentives. So you start stacking up those dollars, that benefit can be tremendous. So, well, guys, I appreciate your time today. Thanks for having this conversation. End of the year, we have tax planning guides that go out that will include any of those changes. And then our location advisory, we're always on the ball. States change from time to time. So there'll be different email blasts or campaigns that come out just with any of those changes. So stay tuned to all our social channels, the podcast, and we thank you guys for listening and watching.
Thank you for taking time to tune in today. You can subscribe to the Let's Talk Tax podcast on YouTube and follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. In addition, today's show notes and links to more about the episode can be found online at mcguiresponsel.com/Let's Talk Tax Podcast. We'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone.